Hurts has got it, wants to throw. Hurts setting up the screen. It is complete and blown up. Miles Sanders caught it. Malcolm Rodriguez was there waiting for him. That's a big play by Rodrigo.
Welcome to the 20-Minute in the Huddle podcast presented by Microsoft. I am Tim Twentyman. He is PJ Clark, who always joins me post-game. And unfortunately, PJ, there weren't enough of those big plays that are in that intro with Malcolm Rodriguez.
Nope, not enough today.
No, it was certainly a tough game for the Detroit Lions coming at home. Right, you dropped one that you thought you should have got last week.
Yep.
Really, an opportunity to get to 500, get to 2-2, feel pretty good about yourself before heading the road again. And Seattle comes in here and puts 48 points on Detroit's defense. The offense is good. They score 45, but at the end of the day, you got to score more points than your opponent. Otherwise, you don't win. And now the Lions sit at 1-3, and boy, they got a lot of question marks to answer.
48 points is a lot of points.
A lot of points for a Seattle offense and Geno Smith that came in averaging 15.7. That was 28th in the NFL.
47 in their first 3 games combined. Wow. 48 today.
And so Dan Campbell talked about it after the game, and I think that's going to be a big storyline all week as we shift over to focusing on New England. But before that, there's going to be a deep dive with this defense. I mean, they came in ranked last in points allowed. They were toward the bottom, if not last, in just about every major statistical category on defense. And whatever they're doing, it's not working. So, Dan Campbell admitted much after the game, said, look, we need to take a deep dive into this thing and figure it out. This is what Dan Campbell had to say after the game.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't know about that because there again, I go back to, man, I got a lot of faith in Aaron Glenn. I got a ton of faith in those assistants. And I think it's just, I think we sit down and I think we look at everything together. And because really, I think more than anything, maybe it's time for a deep dive, a real deep dive into it. Players, everything that we're doing. But I also trust what he's doing. And there's a reason why I hired him. And so I want to let him do his job. But certainly I got to look a lot deeper than I have.
So, and Dan's, I think, had his hand more on the offense than he has the defense. I think he's,
especially last year.
Yeah, and he's trusted Aaron Glenn to, navigate that part. And there's going to be no, coaching firings or anything like that. At least I didn't get that from Campbell after the game. So, I think it's just a situation where they're all going to sit down and they're going to try to figure this thing out. And maybe it's some tweaks to scheme. Maybe it's some personnel things where some guys just aren't fitting, and maybe it's a time to go to some of these young guys. It'll be very interesting to see what they come up with because this certainly just isn't attainable.
And I think you hit it there at the end with the young guys. To me, if you're going to be giving up points like this, you may as well get live reps for as many of the young guys as you can because this is still, one of the younger teams in football, such a young defensive unit, a lot of new players even from last year that are new to the scheme and projectable. You think you're going to be here in the future, you may as well just throw them in and see what happens.
And the real disappointing part about Sunday for me was because the offense played so well. Minus the Jared Goff pick six, which he lamented after the game, and obviously when the final score is 48-45, that looms large. But I certainly do not put this loss on Jared Goff, on the offense, on anyone from that side of the ball.
45 points without Swift and St. Brown and the
Chark.
late Chark ad.
Yeah.
To even do that, to have the firepower to do that, I don't know if anybody saw that coming today, much less at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, I think a lot of the stuff in the past game has settled in for us, and Ben's doing a hell of a job getting us ready every week. And I know that we had the receivers we had today, but I felt really good with those guys, with Q and TK and Khalif. I've had a lot of reps with them, so it wasn't maybe outside it looked like we had a bunch of backups in there, but to me personally, I had a lot of guys I've had a lot of reps with, so we're able to roll a little bit offensively.
And I think that's the disappointing thing is that they're so fun to watch offensively. They're playing so well offensively. They lead the NFL in touchdowns after the first month. They've gained over 1,700 yards of offense. I mean, it's just been so good. You look at some of the offensive numbers, and I mean, this is like on record pace with this offense. And they're fun to watch, and it doesn't matter who's in there, to your point. They just keep doing it. That offensive line, Jared Goff and Ben Johnson and Ben Johnson are just clicking right now. They can run the football 145 yards. They can throw it. It doesn't matter which receivers are out there. Hockenson, who's been pretty quiet the first few weeks of the season, steps up. 12 targets, 8 catches, 179 yards. That big guy's rumbling and bumbling, stumbling down the sideline, 81 yards.
This is the TJ Hockenson game for the foreseeable future.
And that's the disappointing part to me is because they're playing so well offensively, and this is an offensive-driven league. And if you can't score points in this league, you're just not going to win. And they're doing it. And
got that figured out.
They've got it. And for the defense to be as historically bad to start the season as it's been, it's just like you feel like you're snake bitten as a Lions fan because you finally have something, and then the other side of the ball can't figure it out, and now you're losing close games. 45 points, I think, Pete, should win you a game in the NFL probably, 99% of the time?
I can't imagine there are too many teams that have lost.
And it's those close losses, I think, that become frustrating with Dan Campbell, too. I saw a statistic. That was his 9th one-score loss in 21 games since he took over at the beginning of last year. That's most in the NFL.
16 losses, 9 of them by 1 score.
1 score.
Yeah.
So you're so close, but they just can't figure out a way to make that one play late or do the things that you need to do to kind of get over that hump consistently. They've done it, but consistently they haven't been able to do it, and I think that's probably got to be the most frustrating thing for Campbell. After these losses and the hat's kind of up a little bit, he's been taking it off and on and off and on and just frustrated. It's just trying to push the right buttons and try to get this team to win some of these close games. That's the next step, right?
It really is. I mean, we said it last week too. It's a learn how to win kind of thing, even for such a young team, and you need to play close games in order to win close games down the line. But there were a lot of close games last year. I know that's been harped on a lot. Taylor Decker, especially last week, saying close isn't a thing anymore, and it's time for them to start closing them out. And at some level, it's hard to disagree with that.
It's really hard to disagree with that. And when you break down the defense a little bit, I thought the one positive was probably Malcolm Rodriguez. 10 tackles, forced the fumble on special teams,
rushing the passer,
had a QB hit. I thought he played really, really well, and he's kind of, I think, put himself in that spot where that's his job now. I mean, there's Barnes play a little bit more than we've seen the last couple games, but that is Malcolm Rodriguez's job, and I think that's a guy that they're going to count on moving forward. Where I've been really disappointed, though, Peach, is this Lions pass rush. Where was it? Where was it last week? Where was it today? I mean, where was Aiden Hutchinson and these guys? I look at 1 sack, and that was 0 sacks for the Detroit Lions.
Only a handful of QB hits, even
3.
Yeah,
that was it. 3, and
one was from
2
Rodriguez.
from Hutch and 1 from Rodriguez. You look at Hutchinson, 5 tackles, 2 quarterback hits, but number 2 overall pick, right? You want a lot more production than that. And it doesn't always have to be sacks. I think, people sometimes get enamored with that statistic. To me, it's also, pressures.
Pushing the pocket.
Making
somebody move.
Making somebody else get a sack. Speeding up a quarterback's clock, making, him uncomfortable. Then they tend to make mistakes. And, you flushing a quarterback out of the pocket because you get a really good rush and he throws an interception. Well, it shows up on the stat as a, pressure. But that's a key play. And they're just not getting enough of that. I think Geno Smith was really comfortable in the pocket. Again, they had trouble with his legs getting out of the pocket. We saw it with Jalen Hurts. That's an issue that they've got to deal with now because any quarterback that can run at all has now seen that in the Lions defense twice, and that's going to be in the game plan for sure moving forward. So the defensive line, to me, they've got to figure out ways to generate more pressure. And I think what Aaron's doing is he's seeing that they're not getting consistent pressure with 4 guys. So what's he doing?
First in blitz rate.
And the problem when you blitz is what happens behind it. it's man coverage, right? It's, and, I just don't know if the Lions have the talent in their secondary right now to make up for, some of these one-on-one situations against some of these really talented receivers. We saw it with DK Metcalf a couple times in this game. Got
the
Jeff
deep one
Okudah.
to Lockett was the one where
Huge
Aiden got
play.
home.
Yeah. And
just-
you blitzed. He got home, but just a second too late. He chalks it up. I think Amani Oriwariwe got kind of turned around or lost, and
Yeah,
big
that ball
play.
was just straight up in the air. Nobody
Yeah.
knew where it was.
Yeah, and a big play. And it's, again, like we talked about, close with the score. It's close, not making a big play, too. Like, you're just an inch off here, a second late there. It's just...
I think the defensive line really misses John Cominsky.
Yeah, they
which
do.
is weird to say, for somebody that didn't come into the year as a starter, but he did so much, especially for Hutchinson, playing off each other with Hutch on the outside and Cominsky playing 3-tech, especially in that Washington game.
And some of the games that they play in the stunts and stuff like that, I mean, John sacrifices himself a lot in those to help Aiden, as you said, and other guys. He kind of takes on that double team and frees guys up.
Yeah.
He's very undervalued, and look, the Lions miss him. Before the injury, the first 2 games of the season, it wasn't Aiden Hutchinson who was leading this team in quarterback pressures. It was John Cominsky, and so they didn't put him on IR. I know he had surgery early last week.
Yeah, still wearing a cast.
Still wearing a cast, but the fact that he didn't go on IR makes me believe that maybe it's sooner rather than later. I don't know about this week, but probably after the bye, I would think.
Especially early on. Even in that schedule release episode, we both lamented the early bye.
Boy, how much has that come in handy for them
Coming
now?
in handy now.
With the injuries you're dealing with Swift, with St. Brown, with Chark. And the Chark one, we'll get some more clarification, but when Dan said it was on that ankle that he got surgically repaired in the offseason, little red
Not what I wanna
flags
hear.
raised
Yeah.
for me. I was like, oh boy, that's never good when a guy's dealing with the same injury that he's had surgery on. Hopefully that's not a big deal. Hopefully it's just, he did something, needed some rest, and he's fine,
And
but
the bye
something
also,
to monitor.
It gets you time on some of the pup guys. Jerry Jacobs is eligible to return to practice next week, and that's a cornerback at a position of need right
And I think he
now.
will
Yeah.
return. I think he's chomping at the bit.
Yeah.
And, he's a guy
Could we
that this
see Jerry
coaching
Jacobs in
staff,
3 weeks? Probably.
this coaching staff really likes them some Jerry Jacobs.
Yeah.
I mean, they love his toughness, his grit, the fact that he can come up and put his hands on guys. I think, it was obviously a step back for Jeff Okudah in this game, but look, that's DK Metcalf, right? I mean, you get one-on-one, he's going to make plays down the field. You can't make them all. That's the thing about playing cornerback in this league that people have to remember is Jeff played so well the first 3 weeks that there was going to be a time when he got hit with a couple plays. That's
And
just the nature of the league.
he wasn't against A.J. Brown, who's the DK Metcalf. Those two are very similar, big physical guys, and we didn't see him against A.J. Brown, and he drew the DK Metcalf card today. It happens.
It happens. He'll be all right, but Amani Oriwari, when Jerry Jacobs comes back, do they want to put him outside still? Do they maybe deal with Mike Hughes? They're going to get him on the field, I think, because they love the way he plays. It's just it'll be interesting to see how they do that rotation cornerback wise. Anything else jump out to you about this one? I mean, obviously defense is going to be huge this week. The offense is terrific. We love where that's humming. Anything else jump out?
I just again, I think the run game is Jamal today had more explosive plays than I think you would accustom to. Justin Jackson caught a touchdown. Craig Reynolds had a couple big runs that it's becoming
That's not a flash in the pan.
like the wide receivers was plug and play today with Josh Reynolds, an established NFL receiver, but you plugged in Cephas and Kennedy, and you're still humming. Whoever is back there behind the offensive line currently is getting whatever they want.
There were some old school 90 traps in there. There was some good stuff in that run game. And Jamal Williams, 19 attempts, 108 yards, 5.7 average. Had the 51-yard touchdown that was just blocked beautifully, and then the stiff arm frees him. Had 2 more touchdowns. What does he have now on the year? 7?
He had 4 going into
6?
today. Yeah, so 7.
Yeah. Wow. So he's playing well, and I agree with you. This run game is legit. The Lions came in averaging 170 a game. They were a little down from that 145, but the average is what I look at, 5.8.
It's hard to run the ball for 170 yards when you're in a shootout like this. So I think it may be like a lower
Yeah.
score.
I mean, at one point in the third, it was, 38-23?
Yeah,
so
it's
I know
hard
at
to
that
run the
point,
ball at that point.
yeah. No, that's a good point. And I think if they can ever get to a position where they're, like we saw in Washington, where they
you
get
can
up,
bleed this clock out if you're ahead in the fourth quarter.
because this team can run the
if you're getting
football.
4 yards a carry.
Yeah, 100%. You mentioned Hockenson. You love that for him. Another one for me is Josh Reynolds. I think he's in a really good spot right now with Jared Goff. Obviously, they were teammates in Los Angeles. And, now Josh had an opportunity. He didn't just come mid-season, try to learn everything. He's had an off-season, went to California through with Jared. And those two seem to be in a really good spot. And with all the injuries that we talked about at the wide receiver position, to have a guy – step up and Jared feels really good about, he had 7 catches, 81 yards, had a touchdown. I think he's playing really well. Jared said after the game that he's never seen a more confident Josh Reynolds, and that bodes well for the Lions offense too moving
That
forward.
helps even when you have the other 3 back and you're, Swift is obviously a great receiving option, but you have the other 2 wide receivers and you have an emerging TJ now again, but that even helps, just to have another guy who a big body that can go up and get it in the end zone. That catch he made fighting through contact in the end zone was tremendous.
Well, we'll have to see what the injuries look like this week. You got to think maybe Ross St. Brown can make his way back. We'll have to see about Chark and Swift. I don't know. That's probably after the bye for me if I'm going to take a stab and guess at it.
You got Jonah too.
With a finger.
Where's he at?
Where's he at? So, there's some injury things we'll obviously, watch this week. But, I think either way, as we've talked about here, we feel great about the offense. I think it doesn't matter who's in, who's out.
Not. Like, you're literally leading the NFL in touchdowns.
It
is impossible to not feel great about
this. Is an explosive Lions offense that is fun to watch. And now, obviously, it's the deep dive of the defense. And what can they figure out in that deep dive, whether it's maybe some different responsibilities for coaching, the way they look at some different things, whether it's some scheme changes, whether that's, some personnel changes, going to some younger guys. Dan Campbell said nothing's off the table. We're going to look at it all, and it'll be interesting to see what they come out because they've got to get better defensively. They're so good offensively that this is a better football team than 1-3. If you lead the league in points, touchdowns, all that stuff, you should not be a 1-3 football team. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out of Allen Park this week in that deep dive. We'll obviously talk to Aaron Glenn, defensive coordinator, on Thursday. We'll be breaking it all down. There'll be a 20-minute in the Huddle podcast, obviously, that comes out on all the channels that you guys get your podcasts and YouTube on Thursday night. So watch for that. It's a disappointing one here, obviously, after this loss. But look, it's 4 games in. There's a lot of season to go. I don't think they're in panic mode quite yet. They just need to figure out some things on defense. They love where they're at offensively. And we'll see what New England has in store for them next week.